Hi everyone, welcome back to another day of GPS 210 Online. I hope that you had a great weekend and thank you for joining me for today's lecture on the 1001 Nights. So, as I always say, you can follow along with the lecture as well by accessing the PowerPoint slides that are on Canvas and then just listening. You can also look at the speed of the lecture. I think I talk at a reasonably good speed, but there are ways to speed it up if you want to get through the lecture a little bit faster. Or you can skip around in the lecture if you review the slides and you're just like, oh, what did she say about this one? So those are some comments just thinking about. I know that the lectures, while I feel like it's a good way to cover the material, it's not the same as being face to face with you guys and asking what you think and talking through the text together. So I get that. Anyways, I've got, I hope that you enjoyed the performance clips of Tartuffe, because that was another reason I added them, was so that you could hear some people talking that weren't just me. And then I've got another video for you today if you'd like to look at that for the 1001 Nights. So with this text, we are reading selections of 1001 Nights from the 14th century manuscript. So you may have thought, as you were reading last night, eagerly anticipating, as I was the first time that I saw that there were selections of 1001 Nights in the anthology, that you were going to read about Aladdin or Ali Baba. I'm sorry. That's not the stories we read for last night. I hope that you enjoyed them, though. Those texts, those tales, are actually added later than the manuscript that we are reading from today for today's selection. So something else I want you to think about as you are looking at these stories is that this is our first text for our theme on judgment, gender, and social roles. Now, the gender discrimination was probably fairly clear to you within this text. However, there's also class and race discrimination within the text as well. And so I challenge you to think about those moments and think through the ways in which people are judged and the ways in which they're classified based on their class, their gender, or their ethnicity. So let's go ahead and cover an overview of the background of the text, and then I'll go through some of the discussion questions, and you can take a look at those on your own as well and think through those, okay, before completing the quiz. So today and tomorrow you should be working on your Essay 1 as well. And so the reading for tomorrow, Snow in Midsummer, is a little bit lighter, and by that I mean shorter, than the reading for today. And the lecture for today is going to be a little bit shorter too, because I want to give you time to work on those essays. All right, so the first reference that we see of 1001 Nights is actually from 879 CE, or the 9th century. The 1001 Nights is an anonymous work. And as I mentioned, the selections that we are reading are from a 14th century Syrian manuscript. But the tales are much older and were passed down orally. So we have tales that are Indian, Arabic, Persian, etc., and Sanskrit, etc. And I'm going to click on this link so that you can see a timeline for that. Here we go. All right. And this is a lovely website called learner.org that has some great resources for you on this text. Here's the regions that the tales have traveled through, and that we have origins of different tales from. The first storytellers being from Iran, Saudi Arabia, and India. Then the tales kind of journey through Baghdad, the Abbasid Empire, and spread west from there. And so just give you an overview of the regions and the wide span that these tales have covered. Okay, so a couple of cool facts about that. The frame tale text about Shahrazad and Shahryar, that's actually an Indian text. Then some of the tales that we read from today are Egyptian and Persian and Arabic. So the tales that we're familiar with, the Aladdin, Ali Baba, and Sinbad, are actually added in the 18th century by a young gentleman called Antoine Galland. He is a French translator. He is the one who is responsible for translating the text to so that Europeans could enjoy the text. And he's also the one that's responsible for the reason why we think of, when we think of 1001 Nights, we think, oh, there's 1001 tales, right? That's why it's called 1001 Nights. No, actually, it's called 1001 Nights because it's symbolic, that there will always be another night of tales, and that there will always be one more tale, so that Shahrazad can keep the narrative going and save her life. Galan's audience, however, the Europeans loved the tales so much that they actually requested that more tales be added. Where are the rest of the tales? There's a 1001 tales, to be sure. So he actually added other tales from his travels that he knew about, and that's how we get the stories of Aladdin and Ali Baba in 1001 Nights. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. This is also part of the video that learner.org has if you'd like to watch that for review. They also have some other interesting resources on this. So I know we are under a time crunch though with its summer session, so you may not have time to look at all of it. All right, so some other background information. This is the more widely known, it's more, this text, or texts, is more widely known in the Arab world than any other work of Arabian literature. Traditionally, Arabic scholars have never actually recognized it as a work of serious literature, however, and it's still occasionally banned as immoral by Arab governments. Classical Arabic literature was actually unable to find a place for the Nights. The purpose of literature is meant to, instruct, and it became clear that this one was more of, in some ways, entertainment. The style of literature was actually supposed to be more formal poetry, and yet we have prose for this one. So it was a little bit difficult for it to be classified as classical Arabic literature. Kind of like what we think of as like high and low styles of different kinds of media or culture, if you will. All right. Again, just background information. So the tales are obviously filled with magical and fantastic stories that were clearly untrue. This was also a reason why it was hard to classify them. Themes include lust, madness, violence, justice, retribution, and heroism. And I know that you picked up on all of that, right? Something that I do think is important is that we can connect the Nights to other medieval works, such as Chaucer's Canterbury Tales and Boccaccio's Decameron. I don't know if you're familiar with Chaucer's Canterbury Tales or Boccaccio's Decameron. Odds are you did read parts of Canterbury Tales in high school, and you may have had an English teacher who had you dress up as one of the pilgrims. Okay, if not, it's okay. We won't do that in this class either. So, but the thing about the Canterbury Tales is it is a frame tale, okay? What is a frame tale, do you ask? Well, a frame tale has an outer story, and that outer story provides a structure within which other shorter stories can be told. Let me repeat that again. A frame tale is an outer story that provides a structure within which other shorter stories can be told. So what would be our frame tale for this particular text? Shahrazad and Shahryar, of course, yes? And then all of the other stories are embedded within that frame tale. So it's kind of like, I like to think of it as, and especially like with the tales themselves that Shahrazad tells, it kind of becomes like this Russian nesting dolls moment, right? Where you just keep on opening the dolls, and there's like little ones that are stacked out, and it's like goes from big to down, to the smallest little doll, and they're all, connected somehow, okay? So, Boccaccio's Decameron, just in case you're not familiar with it, it's a wonderful text. It's actually about these 10 young men and women who decide to escape Florence because they were wanting to escape dying from the plague. So they go to the countryside, and they decide to, in order to while away the time, that they're going to tell stories for 10 days. They're going to have a competition to see who can tell the best story. So each of the 10 ladies and gentlemen tells a tale each day for the 10 days, which is how we get Decameron, okay? So that's the frame tale, is that it's this group of young men and women who are trying to escape death. And they go to the countryside, and they need something to do, so they tell each other stories. In some ways to pass the time and not think about everyone who they've left behind. Well, that's the frame tale. And the actual stories that they tell each day are those shorter stories that exist within that larger framework. All right, so unlike these tales, however, the narrator that we have in 1001 Nights, Shahrazad, has a more serious purpose in telling the tales. And what is her purpose? That would be a question we'd spend time on if we're in class. You can answer it on your own, yes. And so your answer is probably that she is trying to save her people. She's trying to save the women of her country from being killed. Because Shahryar has decided every night he will wed another woman, and in the morning he will have her killed so that she does not cheat on him. All right. So this is a link to the video that I suggest that you could watch as a way to review the important parts of the text. You can also read the introduction if you'd like and think through the introduction. So those are suggestions as to how to access the text in a way that may provide you with more background and more comprehension of the text if you had any trouble with any of the stories. Okay. So here's another map of the regions of the tales. I include that in the PowerPoint so you don't have to link out to learner.org unless you'd like to. So just another way of kind of visualizing how these stories have traveled to different cultures. So going over some things about the prologue, or what we would consider the frame tale, and then the short stories that Shahrazad, or the tales that Shahrazad, the tales that Shahrazad actually tells the king. Sorry. So, Shahryar's brother, when preparing for his journey, discovers what about his wife? He discovers that his wife is cheating on him with the cook. So this is somewhat disturbing to him in several different ways. One, his wife is cheating on him. Two, it's not with another king or a lord or even someone who is a personal, like a upper class servant. It's with the cook. Okay, so we've got some class discrimination going on here as well. And then he's also enraged, of course, that his wife has disobeyed him. So what does he do to her? He throws both her and the cook off of his castle walls. How does this action foreshadow what Shahryar will do to the women of his country? Well, I'm sure you can kind of fill in the blank there, right? All right, so something else we could think about is the brothers' relationship. Are they close, Shah-Zaman and Shahryar? Well, they seem to be close in that they both respect each other and respect that they are both strong leaders, but they don't seem to be very close in being able to talk to one another about their problems or what they see as their insecurities. Yes? When Shah-Zaman comes to visit his brother, he is so depressed he doesn't even want to talk to his brother about what has occurred. And yet, what makes him feel better? Realizing that Shahryar is also being cheated on. Oh, and also that it's not just that his wife is cheating on him, but Shahryar's concubines are cheating on him as well with slaves. Is there a double standard going on here with the husbands and the wives? Yes, there is. So we have a king who has a wife and concubines who is upset that his wife has been cheating on him and his concubines have been cheating on him. So they can only have, you know, a relationship with him, but he can have a relationship with multiple women. Okay, so there is a double standard going on. You know, like I said, there's some gender discrimination in this text and some things going on that seem to be establishing a imbalance of power, if you will, in the relationship, which kind of speaks to why perhaps the women are disgruntled in the first place. Okay, so we could, if we were in class, we would have a discussion about that, okay, and we would hash that out. And if you decide to write about 1001 Nights for your essay, you can certainly write about that as well. So who is put to death after the men return home from their journey? The wife and the concubines. What about the male slaves? Yeah, that's not mentioned. It's not mentioned that they're put to death. Interesting, right? All right, so before they return, though, the brothers go on a quest. Because once they realize that both of them have been cheated on, they say, you know what, we're going to go on a quest to see if we can find someone whose misfortune is greater than ours. And If it is, then we'll return. Otherwise, they shall continue to journey through the land without the need for the trappings of royalty. Okay, so who do they find? They do find someone who is more unfortunate, right? They find the demon and his wife. This is a moment that we would consider to be Schadenfreude. Okay, this is a German term, Schadenfreude. It means taking relief from the greater magnitude of another's suffering. Wow, I thought I had it bad, but when I observed this other person, well, then I kind of felt better about my situation. That's known as Schadenfreude. Okay, sounds much better than, explaining it that way, maybe because it's German, so yes. So it sounds fun to say. Say it with me, Schadenfreude. All right, so who do they meet and what is he carrying? They meet this demon, and he's carrying this woman on his back, and he has kept her in this chest and locked her up so that she can't be disloyal. And how did he actually get her in the first place? Well, he stole her on her wedding night. It's incredibly sad. So how does the woman convince the two kings to climb down from the tree? Well, she actually, pretty much gets them to, or pretty much actually influences them through threats, right? She says, if you don't come down from the tree, I'm going to wake the demon up. So you have to come down and have sexual relationships with me. So she then has sex with both men. And Shahryar and Shahzaman end up feeling sorry for the black demon and think his plight is worse than theirs. Why? How many men has she slept with? They make 100, and she takes rings from all of them. Well, why is she doing this in the first place? She was stolen on her wedding night. Okay, so she wasn't given the choice as to whom she would be able to be with. So, as 21st century readers, I'm going to try to minimize the webcam because it's getting away of the PowerPoint slide. Okay, so as 21st century readers, can we feel pity? Do we feel pity for the demon? Yeah, probably not. He's the one who stole this woman from her rightful husband, or the husband that she planned on marrying. What about, is there another way to read the story? Yes, there is. Okay. 100 men have known me under the very horns of this filthy, monstrous cuckold. If you're not familiar with the term cuckold, it is when a man has been cheated on, and the symbol for that is growing horns. Who has imprisoned me in this chest, locked it with 4 locks, and kept me in the middle of this raging, roaring sea. Sounds like she has a very miserable life. He has guarded me and tried to keep me pure and chaste, not realizing that nothing can prevent or alter what is predestined, and that when a woman desires something, no one can stop her. So, this is a moment in the text where we as 21st century readers can feel sympathy for this woman, as she has a very difficult life. And she is acting out in a way to protest what has happened to her. And yet, can we also feel sorry for anyone else? Well, yeah, we can feel sorry for the men she has had sex with, because she's forced them to do so, and threatened them by saying that this black demon is going to wake up and kill them if they do not do what she says. So I point out this particular part of the story because I think it's interesting to think about how the characters are all, even the black demon, are trying to, and the wives and the concubines, and the slaves, they're all trying to establish and gain some kind of power through sex. And yet, it doesn't actually make any of them feel better or actually result in a win for anyone. The wives and concubines are killed. The black demon's wife still is locked up in the chest. The men that she has imprisoned basically as well don't actually sympathize with her. Sadly, instead, the two kings think, wow, if this black demon can't control his wife, then how could we possibly? And so they don't learn a lesson of actually trying to stop this violence. They instead they're further corrupted and further become more cynical And that's how we get to where we are in the story, where the king decides, he's so cynical that he decides that he's going to marry a different woman each night and kill them the next day so that no one will ever cheat on him again. So enter Shahrazad, who is going to try to break this cycle and heal the king of his depression and his cynicism, yes, as well as his tyranny over his country. At this point, he's not a strong leader. He's not a healthy leader. He's basically killing off all of the women in his country. So describe Shahrazad. She is a very wise young woman, and a very determined one at that, yes? And her father is actually going to discourage her from, the vizier is going to discourage her from marrying the king, but she won't hear anything about it, right? She's going to do it no matter what her father says. But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? Because the father tells two stories in order to try to convince her not to marry the king, not to marry the king. So he tells this tale of the ox and the donkey, and then the tale of the merchant and his wife. So the moral of the tale of the ox and the donkey. I want you to take a look at that one and see what you think the moral is. What happens when the donkey decides what happens when the donkey decides to try to get the ox to get out of work? The ox pretends he is sick, and something occurs where the donkey actually then does not benefit. So how does this connect to Shahrazad? Would she be the donkey or the ox in this story? Well, she would be the donkey. The vizier, or her father, is saying that she thinks she's so smart and that she's going to be able to outwit the king, aka the farmer, but she's not going to be able to do so. She's actually going to end up suffering the consequences. So the next story, the tale of the merchant and his wife, where the merchant ends up abusing his wife because she is pestering him to talk to her about how tell her his secret about how he talks to the animals. This indicates that perhaps the vizier is also fearful for himself as well as his daughter. And so this tale about the ox and the donkey don't work, and then he threatens her with physical violence, which is actually quite alarming. However, neither one of the stories actually work, and she says, I'm going to marry him no matter what you say. So then the sister comes each night so that she will have this, a convenient way of needing to tell a story. So that's also a little awkward, but yes, again, part of the plot. All right, so the first and second night stories. If you want to go through, I think it's a good idea to fill out or think about these questions on your own, and let me know if you have any trouble coming up with the answers. The merchant's crime. What does he accidentally do? He accidentally kills the demon's son. And so the demon vows to kill him, an eye, for a tooth for a tooth. The merchant pleads for his life, and he actually gets 1 year to make amends, yes? The refrain that gets repeated every night, take a look at that. Why would Shahrazad keep on referring to the king as a wise and happy king? Is he wise? Is he happy? No, but it's the power of suggestion, right? If he keeps hearing it, perhaps he will become happy. Because perhaps he will be cured of his depression and his wickedness. Okay, so the first 8 nights. We could go through these, and if we were in class, we would go through them together. I want you to think through each of these, and I'm just going to pick out a few. Who saves the merchant from death and how? Well, 3 different men come to and tell stories, and they all wager and bargain with the demon and say, if my tale is interesting, I'll win back 1/3 of this man's life. And he agrees. So again, we have a parallel here between Shahrazad and these 3 merchants who are coming to tell the tales of the Black Demon, yes? So, and then of course the parallel between the king and this powerful demon as well. Which social classes do most of the human characters in the stories come from? Well, they come from working classes, merchant classes. This could be indicative of the fact that Shahrazad is trying to save her people, yes, because the women that Shahryar has married all come from these kinds of classes. Because he has gone through most of the women in his society. So she's trying to teach him not only that women are, different women women can be different and you can have a woman who has, strong moral values and one who it does not. And she's also trying to teach him that the same can be said of the different social classes, that you cannot make just wide generalizations about a particular people based on one experience that you've had. So the woman in the fourth and fifth Knight's Tale is turned into a deer instead of being killed. Why? Well, the other thing that I think is that you want to focus on as you're reading through and reviewing this text is that Shahrazad is trying to show that there's not the punishment for a crime does not have to be death. It should be appropriate to what the person has done. So this woman is transformed into a deer because, well, symbolically, a deer is quite docile, can't harm anyone, and doesn't really have a whole lot of expressions, right? And is going to just need to follow along with its owner. So the old man and his dogs, they're only going to be dogs for a certain amount of time. So I want you to take a look at that. And then why are they turned into dogs? Well, symbolically, we could say that they're turned into dogs because dogs are loyal and his brothers were disloyal to him. So this is a way to punish them, but in a way that the punishment fits the crime. They're saved from death, actually, because the brother himself begs for their lives. So another way of kind of showing that one can be merciful, yes? And she's wanting to teach the king that he can be merciful. All right, so the third man's tale, if you look at the footnote on that, it's actually added later. And so you want to take a look and see about that if you have the chance. And there's a connection between that story and the father's first story as well. So take a look at that. So more discussion questions as you're thinking through this text. How does Shahrazad compare to the women in the stories she tells? Each of the old men's stories has an evil or sinful woman or man who commits some awful deed or deeds, and a wise woman who helps the old man in the story. So we can there's not too many leaps to say that the Shahrazad connects to the wise woman in the story. So it's again implying that women can be wise, women can be nurturing, they can be healers. Yes, and they can have they can be virtuous. And so the king needs to hear these stories about them in order to heal. So I already talked through that, so I'm going to skip over that one. In each story, characters are transformed instead of being put to death, with the exception of the poor mother in the first story. So kind of think through that a little bit as well. Again, talked through that on the last slide, but I just wanted to emphasize it again. And then the importance of the title and symbolism. Okay, so this is kind of cool. I told you at the beginning that 1001 Nights is not indicative of that there are 1001 tales, or that there are actually 1001 nights in which Shahrazad told all of these tales. We do not know how many nights there were or how many tales there were, actually, because they keep on getting added because they're from all over these different regions. Well, this work was named 1001 Nights because it's symbolic of the idea that there will always be another tale, or that there will always be another night, that the stories will keep going. It's also symbolic of, the number 1001 is also symbolic and is kind of cool. So 1001, and this is from the Norton Critical Edition, okay, so this is just information that goes beyond what's in the introduction. 1001 is a binary of 9. So why is that important? Well, if we're looking at the gestation period for a woman, it's 9 months. There's another backstory that you don't receive in this text, that Shahrazad actually has 3 sons, bears Shahryar 3 sons while she's telling all of these stories. And so she is actually triumphing over death because she becomes pregnant and gives him children, and how many months does it take to bear life? 9 months. So life and hope triumphs over death and hatred. So even if Shahryar is choosing to, he has chosen in the past to marry a woman and kill her off the next day, through keeping Shahrazad alive, he's actually healing. Yes, and life is triumphing over his hatred and his cynicism. All right, so that is it for today. For tomorrow, we will be moving on to Snow in Midsummer. And you do need to complete your quiz, 1001 Nights, your quiz for that, and work on your essays, okay? Email me if you have any questions about the essays, and make sure you watch that overview about the essays too, okay? So the Essay 1 overview and tips. So for tomorrow, though, we're going to be moving on to Snow in Midsummer. And there's a PDF of this on Canvas because this text is not in your book. This is a medieval Chinese play that is actually in the Norton Anthology of Drama. And so I choose to teach it in this class because I think it's an interesting one to think about in relation to 1001 Nights, but also some of the other plays that we'll be reading this session. So when you read Snow in Midsummer, ooh, that should be italicized right there, keep the following in mind. Some texts are difficult to appreciate fully in translation. So do not memorize every word of this. Try to study the plot and the characters. Do not be concerned about the repetition in the text. Or maybe I should say there's repetition in the text, so it may actually get to the point where it's a little bit annoying. Just know that the repetition is there because of the form of the play. So it's not meant to be annoying. Just kind of, keep going. All right. The reading is shorter, again, because I want you to be able to focus on writing Essay 1 and submitting it on time. Okay? So you'll submit Essay 1 by tomorrow night by 10 p.m. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great day.